Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com, and we're back with this week's new comic book reviews. And surprisingly, a light week. It's a light week, kids. Yeah, it's been so there's been so many books come out to, I hate to say it, you kind of get excited when there's not that many books. I mean, there's some good books this week, but it's just sometimes the sheer volume is just it's daunting and overwhelming. So weeks like this are actually pretty nice. So we're gonna get right into it. First off, we have Aquaman the Becoming #1, written by Brandon Thomas with artwork by Diego Orlugi. So this Thomas wrote the Future State Aquaman, which had the Aquaman from the Teen Titans, which is in here, and there was also a kind of a short story that was in the Aquaman special a few weeks ago that has something you don't necessarily need to read it. It's a nice little. It's just a short story with the characters Aquaman, the new Aquaman, Mira, and their baby. But you don't have to read that to read this, and same with the Future State. Even though it was the same writer, this definitely stands on its own. What's interesting is I'm not actually that familiar with this new Aquaman, the one that's been in the Teen Titans. So it was kind of new for me too. So I will give Thomas, he does a good job of kind of you getting to know him, which is always smart, especially for a lot of people that I don't think are going to be that familiar with him. So I think Thomas did, he does a lot of things that sets the character up, and you kind of get to know him, and how his relation with the Titans and Aquaman and Mira or Arthur all fit into place here. And also he's the son of Black Manta, so that there's a lot going on with his history alone. Obviously, he's kind of, in a lot of ways he's had a torn childhood. So that, puts a lot of pressure on him. So I think it makes him kind of an interesting character in the sense of that he's trying to find his way, sort of being Aquaman, because, this story sets up that Aquaman's gonna, and Mirror are taking off, so he's gonna kind of take care of, business on Earth or under the ocean. So that's what, that's the setup for this first issue. And, once again, Thomas does a good job. It's a nice setup. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily overwhelmed with the first issue, but I think it gets off to a good start. The real big win is Ortigi's artwork, which is absolutely gorgeous. The he did the artwork for the Aquaman 80th anniversary special. So you kind of got a feel for his artwork, but he really does a wonderful job here. It's a really good looking book. The artwork is really quite nice. And I really, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I don't think it necessarily blew me away, but I did enjoy it. And I think, Thomas gives you a reason to come back for the next issue. There's a nice cliffhanger at the end that gives you kind of a reason. Hey, let's come back. So it's a basic setup here, but I think it's off to a good start. Next off, we have Frontiersman #1 by Patrick Kindlin, writing and with artwork by Marco Freri. Now this is, kind of a setup to a new superhero, but he's actually not new. He's been around. So he was a hero back in the day where he was just kind of like, I guess you could say he's just strong. I don't know that he's super strong, but he's strong, and he's, knows how to fight and everything. And so he, so he's basically retired. And so a kid comes up that wants to use him to kind of like, hey, with global warming and everything, we want to use you as kind of our face because people respect you, blah, blah, blah. And he's kind of like, I don't know, I'm kind of retired. and nobody listened to me back in the day when I said, global warming was kind of a thing. So he goes into town and he talks to a girl because he's out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. The kid gets lost and actually stumbles across him, even though he's looking for him, which is kind of funny. And so then, that's the kind of basic premise is like he, is he going to kind of become a superhero again, even though he's retired at this moment in time? And that's the basic premise that's set up here in this first issue. Kinlan, I think, I think there's some interesting ideas here, but I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed with the story. I mean, there were good parts, and there were parts that just kind of sat there a little bit, but overall, it was okay. It didn't grab me like I thought. There seemed to be times where the story did kind of sag a little bit here and there, but I think I think the concept, there is a good concept here. I think that, and I think it's worth kind of checking out. It's kind of something different, but it wasn't, I was kind of hoping for something more. But I will say I did like Ferry's artwork, and it does really add a nice touch to it, especially because of the backgrounds. He really does a great job, especially in the woods and everything, and he puts a lot of detail in it, which actually does help. But once again, I think it's a good idea. I think there's promise, but I wasn't totally sold on this first issue. So that's where we got that. Next up, we have The Death of Doctor Strange, #1, written by Jed MacKay with artwork by Lee Garbett. Now, first of all, Doctor Strange is not going to die. Let's be realistic about that. That's not going to happen. No superhero ever dies. They always come back. Villains, everybody comes back. So, calling it The Death of Doctor Strange, I get why it's called that when you read this first issue, because in a way he does die, but he isn't dead. That's all I'll say. I don't want to really spoil anything. But what this is it's a setup to it's to Doctor Strange, how he is like the Sorcerer Supreme, and how it kind of fits into the other sorcerer characters in the Marvel Universe. And that's ultimately where at the end of the issue, and it's not spoiling the end of the issue, but the fact that this story is going to go through 11 books. Now, this miniseries is 5 issues, but there's 11 connecting books technically that tell this story. So I'm not totally sold on buying 11 books. That's going to be one thing. Well, I did like what I read. I think MacKay sets up this issue really well. I think that the most interesting thing is that it starts off with just a normal day in Doctor Strange's life. He's walking his ghost dog, which I don't know where the ghost dog came from, but who cares? And he's back to being a surgeon. Apparently his hands are now fixed. So, I think there was a lot of good things here. I think what scares me is that, I don't want to pick up 11 books to find out the story. The question is going to come down to, do you need to read those tie-in books to get this story? We don't know yet. That I can't say, but that did not enthrall me at all to kind of continue wanting to read like 11 books. I don't mind me reading a miniseries, but I don't like being roped into whenever there's these crossovers and stuff. I do not like that. That's just my opinion. I think it's, they're just trying to boost sales on books. But with that being said, I did enjoy this first issue. I think it had, a really good story. I'll give MacKay. I was really intrigued and invested, and like I said, the cliffhanger was really great, and it was a great nod and wink to Steve Ditko, which I thought was a very nice touch. But for me, the really big impressive thing was Lee Garbett doing the artwork, who recently did Shadowcraft over at Image, and it's just really, the book is really good looking. It's a really good looking book, and like I said, I'll give the second issue of the miniseries a chance, but I'm not gonna be buying 11 books. So that's the only thing you might want to look out for if you do start this book. Next up, we have Suicide Squad King Shark #1, written by Tim Seeley with artwork by Scott Collins. Now, on Free Comic Book Day, there was a preview of this book, and if you read that, it was just part of this issue. So that wasn't new story, so you don't have to read that. That's part of this. It's just basically a reprint of this first issue, or part of this first issue. So what it is King Shark has to go back to where, he came from. His dad's like this giant shark, and he has to like kind of defend his right to be king, or the son of the king, or whatever. And so what it is he ends up being teamed up with this girl he happens to like for some reason. They meet in prison, and Amanda says, well, I need somebody to go with him because I can't track him, and somebody needs to take care of him, and he seems to like you. So that's kind of interesting in that respect. And the setup is really quite humorous in that. And there's involving King Shark eating someone. There always is. And so, it's interesting. It's off to an interesting start. I'll give Seeley once again, I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed with it. It was enjoyable for what it was. It was a nice King Shark story, which, obviously he's a big thing now, because of the movie. But the King Shark in the comics is much different than the movie. He's much smarter, he's not the brightest, sharpest tack in the box, but he's not dumb like in the movie. So that's kind of the big difference. I will say that Scott Collins' artwork is really, really nice. It's a really good looking book, and he does a really great job on it. If you saw the preview, it was really good. I just, I liked it. I just didn't necessarily love it. So, I think it's worth checking out if you're a fan of Suicide Squad or King Shark. I don't think it's terrible. It'll be interesting to see where Seeley takes it in the second issue. Next up, we have He Who Fights Monsters #1, written by Francisco Artabani, with artwork by Werther Del Eldra. Now, the basic premise of this story is the Golem story, where it's based on Jewish mythology about creating a golem from clay that fights your enemies. And in this case, like in most of the stories, it's fighting Nazis. So this is not the first telling of this story. So I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with the story. Some may not. But I will say, so far, I don't know that this one was hugely different than the ones I've read before, but I did like it. I think it's a good story. I think that's the ultimate thing. And it's something that's not... some people are going to be familiar with, but not everybody's going to be familiar with. So I think, there's that, going for it, that it's not as well known as some other stories. But I will say that Artabani does a really good job of actually setting up, because we don't even see the golem in this issue, which is actually good, because I think it sets up the premise and everything like this. It takes place during Nazi Germany. And, like I said, it's a slow burn on this first issue. There's a lot of exposition, kind of a lot of setup here to kind of get the story going. There's very little mention of the golem, in passing for the most part. So obviously we'll see him as it goes along. But the really, the one thing, Del Edra's artwork is actually really nice. He's the same artist who does Something Is Killing the Children. So if you're familiar with that, that's maybe why you might be picking up this book. I enjoyed it. Once again, I'm familiar with the story and I still enjoyed it, but I think if you're not familiar with it, I think it's a good version of the Golem story. So I think it's worth checking out this week. Next up, we have Batman Secret Files, Miracle Molly #1, written by James Tynion IV, with artwork by Danny. Now, I have not been following Fear State and all that. I'm kind of epic out right now. I don't need another giant crossover. But I will read, I'm a really big fan of Danny's artwork. I really love her artwork. So that's one of the reasons why, I picked this book up. And I have to say, it's basically an origin story. And even though I haven't been reading it, you can read this on its own. It sets her up as a character. And I think it's rather interesting, because what I think Tynion does here with a lot of great a lot of really good Batman villains, or villains in general, is that they're tragic characters, and he really, kind of feeds into that here, where she's kind of leads this ordinary life. It's kind of like the mousy girl that wants more, and that's the basic premise. Not particularly original or anything. I certainly wouldn't go anywhere near that one on this one, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Is it going to get me to read Fear State? No, but I think it's a nice standalone issue. It's because you don't actually see Miracle Molly until really the end of the, really at the book. I mean, she appears at the beginning, but it's about her becoming that. So, it was fine for what it was. And for me, the big win is Dani's artwork. I really love her artwork. She's really just a wonderful artist. And I think in that sense, it's well worth, checking out if you're, reading Batman, all that kind of stuff. But I would, like I said, it's fine for what it was. Is it going to get me to read anymore? Nope, but I liked it for what it was. Next up, we have Eat the Rich #2, written by Sarah Gailey with artwork by Pius Bach. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of the first issue. I thought it was okay. It's kind of, it's, if you've seen Us or Get Out, Get Out more likely is its closest thing to relate to. And the second issue builds on the first issue, but like I said, I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed with the first issue, and the second issue does do a nice telling of why people work there who know that they're probably going to be eaten by the rich people. And that is kind of that was actually a really interesting part of the story that I didn't expect. And it was really kind of smart. But the problem is, I don't know that this premise is like enough. I think it might make a good longer story, like if it was like 2 issues, but it just seems like it's kind of being dragged out a little bit, in my opinion. So, that's kind of where I'm stuck at on this. Bach's artwork is actually nice. Complements the story really well. I just, I like I said, I wasn't overwhelmed with the first issue. I thought the second issue was decent. I don't think it really dropped off horribly, and I don't think it got a lot better, but it was okay. So, that's where I'm at on that. Next up, we have Supergirl, the Woman of Tomorrow, #4, written by Tom King, with artwork by Bilquis Evely. Now, I'm a big fan of Tom King, and I really love when he gets to kind of go wild with characters, and he really continues to really reinvent Supergirl in this story. And not that he's not trying to change Supergirl, he's not, negating anything that's ever been written, but what he's doing is he's really telling a story about her. Not her being a superhero, not her being the cousin of Superman. It's really a story about Kara. And that's why it's so amazing. And this issue was actually incredibly emotional because they're obviously following this guy who killed the girl's father. She kind of hired Supergirl to, for revenge. But what we see in this issue, and we've known about this, there was, is that there's a trail of blood and death that he has left in his path, and while they're following him to find him, there's all this kind of death and destruction, and that's what this issue is about. And it's so emotional, and it really hits you really quite on a great level. I mean, it's there's times where it's actually a little hard to read. Not that I don't think King went too far, and I think that's smart. It's still a superhero book, but he really nails it here, and I think at this point, in the story, it adds so much like heft and depth to it that it's really, really impressive. And then, Evely's artwork is just absolutely stunning in this book. I mean, this is a great looking book on so many different levels. It's just the way that she captures what King is writing is just, it's amazing. I don't know how, it's when you see an artist like this really able to capture every word and every emotion on the page from a script is just amazing, and Evely just does it so effortlessly that it's gorgeous. It's an absolutely, this is an amazing book. If you're not reading this book, it's a real shame, because it just is so good, and Tom King just keeps hitting these high points with Rorschach and Batman and Catwoman, and he's going to do the Human Target. I mean, he just keeps nailing it, and he it's just amazing. It really is. This really is one of the best Supergirl stories I've almost ever read. And there have been some good ones. So I really, really recommend this. Next up, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin #4. Yes, a new issue. I know, it's hard to believe. So the story is by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird and Tom Waltz. The script is by Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz. The layouts are by Kevin Eastman, and then the pencils and inks are by Isu and Isaac Esquerza. So this issue, we've learned, so this issue we learn what has happened to Splinter and the other turtles. So we finally find out what's going on with that. Mikey finally reveals what has happened. There's also now, so this issue also really deals with storming of the gate of the villain that has taken control, and also has the Foot Clan working with him to take over the city. And so that Mike and April lead the rebels on a raid on the hideout, basically. So that's really what this issue is about. And once again, this book is really amazing, because the story itself is really kind of genius. I mean, it's always great when you kind of come up with, like a last story. And once again, this last story could be so far out it's not even funny. But it's something that Laird and Eastman had came up with a long time ago, but never fleshed it out. And so finally we're getting to see it. And the only thing I can really say bad is how long it's been taking for each issue to come out. I mean, it's insane how long this book is taking to come out. And but with that being said, it's once you sit down and read it, you kind of get right back into where the story goes. It doesn't really miss a heartbeat, so that's actually a really big plus. The artwork is really great. The nice thing is that, like the flashback scenes or have the artwork by Kevin Eastman. So that's actually a really nice touch, and gives you, it gives it a different sense of style, which is smart. But Isu and Isaac's artwork is actually really, really nice. This is a really good looking book. And I at this point, we've all been there, and, next issue is the last one. So hopefully it will come out, hopefully by the end of the year. Fingers crossed we might get the squeak with this one out this year. But it's been a wild ride, and I'm actually really enjoying it. And each issue just kind of keeps getting better and better. And I love the way that the mystery is unraveling in here. And it has a great story and really nice artwork. So it's another big win. Next up, we have Black Hammer Visions #8, written by Scott Snyder with artwork by David Rubin. Now, this is the last issue. These have all been standalone issues. So once again, you can read them on their own. You don't have to read any of the previous issues. Each issue is completely separate and stands on its own, and is done by a different creative team. And they all are characters that we mostly haven't seen in the Black Hammer universe, which is actually really interesting. This one is somewhat of a Western in a way. So it's very hard to describe without giving too much away. But what it is, it starts off in a nursing home, and you find out that one of the attendants is actually, robbing, the people. So, when they're dying, not that he's robbing them while they're alive. He waits till they're dying or dead. Then he goes through, and like if they have jewelry and stuff like that, he's been stealing it. So one of the patients has figured this out, but he has a story that has to do with a Western gunman back in the West. So, like I said, I don't really want to give much away, but they obviously, the present and the past go together here. And Snyder's done a really great job of coming up with a really great story here of having, kind of those two stories. They're obviously connected to each other, but they're also, the way he weaves them in and out is just absolutely smart. And then you have David Rubin, who his artwork is absolutely fantastic. He did a book called Ether, which was amazing. He's also done some Black Hammer stuff, so this is not his first rodeo in the Black Hammer universe. And it's a gorgeous looking book. It's a great story. I've loved every issue. I love the fact that they're standalone, and they're also characters that we haven't seen in the Black Hammer universe. So I think it really expands how amazing this universe is. And I love the fact that, Jeff Lemire has invited this all-star lineup of talent to do these books. And it's been a blast. And I am a huge fan of Black Hammer and Jeff Lemire. So even though this is not Jeff Lemire writing, he's let people play in the sandbox, and it has been a great ride. So I highly recommend this issue. It was really, really wonderful. Next up, we have Shazam #3, written by Tim Sheridan, with artwork by Clayton Henry. So we have Shazam and one of the other schoolmates. They've gone to hell to find the Rock of Eternity. They found it, and now, so basically Satan's pissed. He's following him. He's like, you're not supposed to be here. I'm going to kill you. So they get an offer to, and I don't want to reveal who comes into the thing, because it's a nice little surprise. But basically, there's another villain that kind of that shows up to get them to the Rock of Eternity, and yet there is a toll to pay for that, and there's a lot going on. So it's hard to explain these things and not I don't want to reveal, because I'm actually really enjoying this. And I haven't, I did enjoy the previous Shazam series, but it was kind of all over the place. But this one's very nice and self-contained, and I like that. And it's only 4 issues, so we're going to wrap it up in the next issue. And I've really enjoyed this. I love Shazam as a character, and I think Seeley, or Sheridan, I'm sorry, has done a really nice job here of putting it all together. And I think the one thing I like about it is that he's really found that one key element that, when Billy is Shazam, he's still Billy. And I think that's one of the things I really like about this miniseries, is that he understands that it's not 2 separate characters. It's still Billy. He's just, big and strong, Shazam. So that has been a really, a really good telling in this story. I've really enjoyed that part. And then on top of that, you have Clayton Henry. The artwork is absolutely gorgeous. One of my favorite, and I'll put this up. One of the panels is after, they're running away from Satan, and they're looking over a rock, and it's just, he captures that so perfectly. And it's just, the artwork is amazing, and it's really a good book, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm really enjoying it, especially since, if you're a Shazam fan, this has been a really nice treat. Next up, we have Nightwing 84, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Robbie Rodriguez. Now, this is part of the Fear State, but I'm happy to say that fortunately that doesn't intrude too much into the Nightwing story. Now, he does leave Boothaven to go back to Gotham to, because Barbara has been, apparently Oracle's been hacked. And so he goes to find, she calls him, and he finds out that obviously it's a trap by the magistrate. But then the nice thing is that him and Batman actually team up again. So it's like old times, and it was a decent issue. It gets away from the main story that Tom Taylor was telling, but I didn't feel that it really took me out. He gave him a reason to go there to Gotham, and I appreciate that. It didn't feel the fear state thing didn't feel too shoehorned into the story. So I have to applaud Taylor for not having it, overwhelm the story and take control. So that's a big plus. Bruno Redondo is normally the artist. He's taking a break, but Robbie Rodriguez fills in quite nicely. Does a really nice job here, and and keeps the book going and everything. So like I said, the good news is that the fear state doesn't screw up the entire thing. So if you're kind of concerned about that, don't be too concerned. Obviously, Tom Taylor has figured out how to do it without screwing the continuity up. So that's a big plus. So I'm happy for that. And finally, this week we have Alien #7, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, with artwork by Salvador LaRocca. So this is a new story arc. I read the first story arc and I wasn't particularly overwhelmed, because I've always said when you have something like an Alien franchise or Predator or something like that, that's a movie and then they bring them to comics, there's always the thing of like, okay, what are you bringing to this story? What are you bringing different? What is going to make this feel different than, the Alien films? The first story arc I felt more like been there, done that. I'm not saying it was bad. It was nice, but it didn't really, for me, it didn't go outside the box. I will say at least in this first issue of this new story arc, it does go outside the box, and it actually it's going to take place on a planet. I know, shocking. Now there obviously is in the beginning, the aliens on a spaceship, but the spaceship crashes into the planet. So then that's how the aliens get there. So that's the basic premise here on this first story arc. Like I said, Johnson did a nice job on the first story arc. It just, for me, didn't feel super different. I will say that this story did feel much different than I expected, and I'm definitely kind of looking forward to see where he takes it from here. That hopefully it doesn't necessarily just become yet something that we've felt before or read before. So that's going to be a key here. As always, LaRocca artwork is really, really nice here. And I like the fact that the alien's virtually not even in this issue. It deals with the people on the planet that, that's the main story. So the aliens really don't come in till the end of this, till the end of this first issue. So, the one thing I like about LaRocca, he actually gets to draw stuff outside a spaceship, and he gets to draw, trees and gardens and stuff. And it's like, wow, this is great. So if you haven't been reading Alien, you can jump on because this is a new story arc. So it appears that maybe they're going to do like miniseries within the continuity or the title. So, so hopefully we'll get, there'll be this story arc and the next story arc. That actually, I think, is kind of a smart idea. I think probably doing his miniseries might have been a little better, but, once again, I actually really enjoyed this first issue. I enjoyed it much more than the first issue of the first story arc. So I think it's well worth checking out, especially if you're an Aliens fan. So that's going to do it this week. We did really well. Kind of a small week. There's still good stuff in there. So I think it's, once again, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I don't think there was nothing that was terrible, thankfully. There was nothing that was terrible that I read this week. So that's always a plus. So as always, a public service announcement. I get my books at Pulp Fiction Comics, Long Beach, California. Ryan runs a great store. Annie and Eduardo are great assets to the store. And it's a really wonderful store. They have a great pull service, offer graphic novels at 30% off. They have a sister store in Culver City run by Chris and her team, Pulp Fiction Culver City. Same name, separate stores, run by separate people, but both really good stores. And as always, please be safe out there. Please get vaccinated. Things are looking a little bit better, but as always, you want to make sure you stay safe. Wear your mask. And just really get vaccinated if you haven't been vaccinated, please. That's really how we're going to beat this whole thing. And as we end every show, please be kind. Kindness is easy. Kindness is free. Being kind to each other is great. There's a lot of snarkiness and hate in the world already, and none of us need to add to that. So please be kind, and just take care of yourselves. And thanks for watching, and we'll do it again next week. This is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com signing out. Take care. Be kind. Bye.